Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Olivia and I recently finished posting my Camino de Santiago series. I decided to make this follow-up video where I can talk a little bit more about planning the Camino and what I would do differently if I walked the Camino again. I think the best way to do this would be to walk you through my entire Camino journey and talk a little bit more about what you can expect from each stage and how I would structure it a bit differently to make the best of my time on the Camino. Before I get into the video, I need to mention two things. I have pre-booked my entire Camino online and I also did not stay in any donativo albergues, and that is because I filmed my entire trip and this was just more convenient for that. So without further ado, the first thing that I would do differently on the Camino, I would take more time to complete the walk. I walked the Camino in 31 days and that was not even enough to complete the walk comfortably, not to mention to visit places or slow down and spend some time with people and get to enjoy places and so on. So I think 33 days would have been just the time needed to comfortably walk every day. But if we add days for rest and visiting places and slowing down a little bit from time to time, then I think more time would be required. Starting with my first day, the most common stage for day one is Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Roncesvalles. However, I wish I spent one night in the Pyrenees. That area is absolutely beautiful and you're not going to get scenery like that for a very long time on the Camino, more specifically from Roncesvalles to Foncebadon. And because of that, I think it's a shame to just speed through the first day instead of actually spending some time there and getting to enjoy the beautiful scenery. Whether you can walk to Roncesvalles or not, I think it's still worth taking the time to enjoy that part. If you want to stay in the Pyrenees, you have two options. There is Albergue Orison and Albergue Borda. Orison is 7 kilometers into the walk and Borda is 10 kilometers into the walk, and I think choosing between the two really depends on your preference. From what I could see, I think Orison is a bit more busy and lively, and I think Borda is a bit more quiet and relaxing. Both of these places would require pre-booking because there aren't that many spots for all the pilgrims walking through, and I actually met pilgrims who regretted not booking in advance because they were pretty much forced to walk all the way to Roncesvalles, and that just made things unnecessarily uncomfortable for them because they were probably not ready for that long walk. On my first day, I walked past Roncesvalles because I couldn't actually find accommodation in Roncesvalles, which it was just an unnecessary struggle, to be honest, and I would not do it like that again. So personally, I would stay at Albergue Borda and then the next day I would walk past Roncesvalles to one of the small villages, probably Espinal. And speaking of day one other thing I really did not pay too much attention to, and I should have, is the weight of my backpack. When I booked my journey, I felt comfortable with the hike itself because I've done things like that before and I was just generally fit. But the weight of my backpack had such a huge influence on my walk that I barely made it. And again, I just ended up struggling unnecessarily. In my case, that was influenced by the camera equipment, but please make sure you do not underestimate your backpack because it had a huge influence on my walk. If you do decide to walk all the way to Roncesvalles, please make sure you have enough water with you because there was a long stretch where I ran out of water and that was yet another struggle for me that I could have avoided. Moving on to the next stage, between Roncesvalles and Zubiri, you have a few charming villages: Burghete, Espinal and Viscaret. These make for pleasant stops before reaching the stage's destination, Zubiri. While I couldn't find affordable accommodation to book online in Zubiri, I walked close to Pamplona instead. However, Zubiri is a nice town and it's definitely the best place to stop before reaching Pamplona. The next stage is Zubiri to Pamplona. I only spent one afternoon in Pamplona, but for me that was enough time to enjoy the city center and get a feel for the city. I feel like it was too soon into my journey to take more days in such a busy, large city, and I was actually looking forward to going back on the Camino, meeting more people and just being out in nature. So personally, I did not feel like spending more time there. I really enjoyed visiting Plaza del Castillo and the popular Café Iruna where Ernest Hemingway used to go. Surprisingly, the cafe was not busy at all and I had a great red wine for a little over €2. Unfortunately, I missed the opportunity to visit the cathedral in Pamplona as it closed at 4 p.m. I then went on a sunset walk along Pamplona's historic walls, which was absolutely beautiful. Overall, I feel like I got to enjoy the city to the fullest. Next day stage is Pamplona to Puente la Reina, although I walked 7.5 more kilometers to Sirauquí. The stage's highlight is Alto del Perdón, where you will get to enjoy some beautiful views. Puente la Reina is also a really beautiful town that is worth staying in. However, I also really loved Sirauquí, a beautiful village where I got to stay in one of my favorite albergues on the Camino. Casa Maralots was one of those nice traditional albergues with an interesting history where you get to meet people and have dinner together and enjoy the Camino experience. It was also one of the most comfortable albergues. There was plenty of space in the rooms, really nice bathrooms, and I would definitely stay there again. The next stage is from Puente la Reina to Estella, but since I was already in Sirauquí, I had a shorter walk for the day and I got to enjoy the beautiful town of Estella. I really enjoyed visiting the Church of San Miguel, and I had the beautiful place and views of the town to myself, as there was nobody else there. I stayed in a modern hostel named Agora, which was great in terms of comfort. I generally had a much better sleep in the albergues that had curtains for the beds. Even though they were not traditional and did not have the community aspect to them, they were great from time to time as they offered more privacy and modern facilities. The next day's stage is from Estella to Los Arcos. However, I walked 8 more kilometers further to Torres del Rio, and I would not do that again. I liked Los Arcos more, and if I walked the Camino again, I would stop there. The stage had 2 great highlights: the blacksmith shop with its fascinating history, which I absolutely loved, and the wine fountain. The next stage is Los Arcos to Logroño. I absolutely loved Logroño, and if I walked the Camino again, I would spend an extra day there. I was there on the weekend and it was so lively. There was something about the atmosphere I really loved. I stayed at a wonderful hostel, which was by far the best hostel in terms of facilities on the entire Camino. Again, this was a modern place, but I stayed in a 6-bed female-only room with our own bathroom, and unlike in the other albergues, you could have the bathroom to yourself. There was air conditioning, hotel bed sheets, new blankets and many things like that. So even though this was not your authentic traditional Camino albergue experience, it was by far the most comfortable one. This place definitely requires pre-booking as it was fully booked in October. The next day I walked from Logroño to Nájera. If I walked the Camino again, I would not walk the same stage. I would actually stop in Navarrete or walk a little bit longer and stop in Ventosa. Nájera was not my favorite place on the Camino. I know this is just a personal preference, but I liked the atmosphere in Navarrete a little bit more, and if I had to choose between the two, I would choose Navarrete instead. The highlight for me was La Grajera Park. This was right outside Logroño and it had this beautiful lake, and overall I really enjoyed that part of the walk. The next day I stayed in Grañón, where I had a really nice accommodation called Casa Rural Cerro de Mirabel. I loved the room I got for 50 euros, but Grañón itself was a very small village with only one cafe open, with not the best food quality. I wish I stayed in Santo Domingo de la Calzada instead, which I liked way more. One other thing I need to mention, and I want to be really honest in this video, is that I didn't really like the walk between Santo Domingo and Belorado. It was right by the highway, there were so many trucks passing by. There was also construction work, which I know is temporary, but just walking by that busy road was very underwhelming for me and I was not expecting it, especially since people usually only tend to mention the good parts of the Camino. If I walked the Camino again, I would stay in Santo Domingo and then in Belorado, where I found a really nice albergue online called Cuatro Cantones. From Belorado, I would walk to San Juan de Ortega, which was a lovely small town. I stopped at this cafe named El Descanso de San Juan and loved the atmosphere so much. This was also an albergue, but I don't know anything about the albergue itself. The cafe had this fantasy-inspired decor and music, and I had a great time there. From San Juan de Ortega, I took the alternative route to Burgos, which was by the side of the road, because that is where I found pre-booked accommodation. However, I would advise everyone to take the scenic route instead. Burgos is a beautiful city and it is 100% worth spending an extra night there. Burgos Cathedral is a must-see on the Camino, and it is by far the most impressive cathedral I have ever seen. It's also worth going all the way up to the castle for these great views of the city. My next stop after Burgos was a place called La Fábrica in Tardajos, and I loved that place. Great atmosphere, great food, the most comfortable bed on the Camino, and it felt like the more traditional places. It was 47 euros per night, which is around the lowest price you can get for a private room with private bathroom on the Camino, and I would definitely stay there again. My next stage was Tardajos to Castro Geriz. The highlight of this stage was definitely Convento de San Anton, which was a donativo albergue within the ruins of a church. Although this place had no hot water or electricity, I think it was a really unique place to spend a night on the Camino. Castro Geriz was also a lovely place worth staying in, and it also had a castle you could visit. The following day, I walked from Castro Geriz to Fromista. The highlight of this stage was definitely hiking this hill with beautiful views, although I could not see anything because of the fog. Fromista was not my favorite place on the Camino, as it did not have that quaint historical charm found in many other places. However, this is pretty much the only available town to stop for this stage. The next day, I walked from Fromista to Carrión de los Condes, where I stayed at a monastery hotel. This hotel is referred to as a parador, a term used in Spain for government-owned hotels located in historical buildings. So it was both a historical monastery and a hotel. I would definitely stay there again, as I found it to be a nice and interesting place, which was really worth the 67 euros that I paid. The hotel also had a really nice restaurant, and even though I paid 12 euros for a Galician soup that was normally 6 euros, it was worth it. The quality did match the prices. From Carrión de los Condes, I walked to Lédigos, where Albergue La Morena was honestly the highlight of the meseta for me. Even though it was modern, it still had a communal dinner, a lovely bar, great food, and an amazing atmosphere overall. It was definitely the place to be in Lédigos, and pilgrims from other albergues were also coming to La Morena's bar. The next day, I walked to Sahagún. This is a place where you can get your halfway through the Camino certificate and also visit a small museum. From here to Leon, honestly, I would walk as fast as I can because the Camino will be way more beautiful after Leon, and there isn't anything to see here really. You'll be walking by the road all the way to Leon. Leon was a lovely city and I really enjoyed being there. I wish I'd stayed for 2 nights instead of 1. My next stop after Leon was Hospital del Órbigo. This was a lovely place and I would definitely stay there again. When I entered Hospital del Órbigo, the medieval bridge took me by delightful surprise with its breathtaking beauty and historical charm. Here is where I stayed at Albergue San Miguel, a unique place on the Camino where paintings made by pilgrims for the past 20 years are displayed on the walls and everyone can pick up a canvas and paint. The following day, I walked to Murias de Recivaldo. The highlight of the stage was definitely Astorga with its beautiful cathedral as well as the Astorga Palace. The Episcopal Palace of Astorga is a stunning neo-Gothic building designed by the architect Antoni Gaudi. I did not actually stay in Astorga, I only stopped to visit, then walked to the next village, and I'm happy I did because Albergue Las Aguedas was another one of my favorite places on the Camino. Most people stay in Astorga, then walk to Fonsebadon, but I stayed past Astorga and walked past Fonsebadon. And I'm so happy I did because I got to stay in El Acebo de San Miguel, which was my favorite place on the Camino. Here, I stayed at Albergue La Casa del Peregrino, and even though it was modern, this was also my favorite albergue on the Camino, especially for the surrounding scenery. Between Fonsebadon and El Acebo de San Miguel, you will also find the famous Cruz de Ferro. If I walk the Camino again from Fonsebadon, I would slow down my pace. From here to Ocebreiro, you'll get the most beautiful scenery on the entire Camino, and I think it's worth taking some time to enjoy every moment. I would stay in El Acebo de San Miguel, then in Molina Seca, and also in Ponferrada. From Fonsebadon on, the weather also got really bad, which brings me to yet another thing I would do differently on the Camino. I would bring waterproof shoes and proper rain protection. I wore my Hoka shoes, which were absolutely amazing. I didn't even have merino socks, I had normal cotton socks. My shoes were one size bigger, which was absolutely perfect. I did not get any blisters, I did not have any issues with my shoes at all. However, I should have got the waterproof ones. I don't know why I didn't, but that would have made such a huge difference as I walked with my feet wet many days in a row. I really underestimated the rain, which made my walks unnecessarily uncomfortable. Those ponchos that you can buy in the pilgrim's shop are not good enough, water still gets through them. The built-in rain protection for my backpack was also not good enough and water got through. So if I walk the Camino again, I would really do a bit more research and get very good quality rain gear, because that was a huge problem that I did not think I was going to have. For some reason, I was expecting the rain to be more on and off and not continuous for so many days in a row. So that really made things difficult for me and I wish I knew better. In Ponferrada, I really enjoyed the beautiful views from the castle, and I also discovered this charming, unique place called La Bodega de Godiva, just across the street from the castle. The next stop after Ponferrada is Villafranca del Bierzo, which is also one of the most beautiful places on the Camino. If I walk the Camino again after Villafranca del Bierzo, I would stay in Osebrero, a beautiful village with stunning views and medieval charm. From Osebrero, I walked to Triacastela and took the alternative route to Samos. This was also a beautiful place, and I'm happy I took this route because I really enjoyed being there. The next stop is Sarria, which brings us to the last 100 kilometers of the walk. This is where the atmosphere on the Camino really changes. You'll see many large groups of people who are loud and fun, and they seem like tourists rather than pilgrims. So the Camino is not the same, which actually made me really miss the beginning of my Camino, where I met all the people, and it made me a bit nostalgic, which is why, again, this was not my favorite part of the walk, and I decided to just speed up all the way to Santiago. From there on, I only had two highlights. One was Porto Marin and the other one was albergue O Candil in Melide. And the last thing I would do differently on the Camino, I would probably book the luggage company as I go instead of pre-booking my entire trip online. So if you don't know, if you have a suitcase with you, or if you would like for someone to carry your backpack, you can hire a company to carry your suitcase every day for each stage. Every albergue has these envelopes from different companies that have a phone number, and it's also where you put the money in cash and you call the company and they pick up the luggage together with the money. If you book the company online, those companies charge you per distance. So for example, if you have a stage that's 30 kilometers, they would charge you double. They would charge you 14 euros instead of 7. However, if you book the local companies that cannot be booked online and you book them with cash on the spot, they charge 6 euros, and it doesn't matter how long the distance for the stage is. So you get a better deal if you book on the spot. However, if you book online, it's a bit more relaxing for the entire trip because you don't have to stress about it. So I guess it's up to you, but the price would be lower with a company that you book on the spot. And that brings me to the end of my video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any other questions, please don't forget to leave them in the comment section and I'll make sure to reply. If you enjoyed this video, you might also enjoy watching my Camino de Santiago series, and if you'd like to watch similar adventures in the future, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. That makes a huge difference for a new creator like me. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!